Guys, go wake up your girlfriends. New UFO video has just landed. Now, I don't know what it is currently with like spherical, silverish UFOs. I remember not that long ago, it was all about Tic Tacs. Now it's all about spheres. We got the Booga sphere, the Jumbo sphere. And now we got the Mosul sphere. Now this story is coming back to 2016. And the picture that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp published in 2023 on their Weaponized podcast, this is the picture. It shows an alleged spherical object sitting over the streets. Again, this was recorded in Mosul in 2016. But this is all we had. We just had this one picture. At the time, news outlets like FoxNews.com, for example, also covered the story. Mosul Orb, US silent on UFO filmed by military over Iraq. Again, this was released in 2023. But we never got more than that. That's all we had, this picture, but that has now changed because due to a Freedom of Information Act request, and I think this guy even had to file a lawsuit against him to get his hands on this footage, right? This person I'm talking about here is Dustin Slaughter. This is the original tweet, as far as I'm aware, that published the footage. I'll link it down in the description so you can check up on it yourself. And here Dustin Slaughter says, new, the UAP register is releasing for the first time video of the Mosul Orb, following a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit I filed last year. This follows a still image of the orb first published by George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell and reported by Christopher Sharp. I don't know who that is. But so these are the people involved, and this is the footage that he got. It's 4 seconds long, okay? A lot of the details here have been redacted, right, and blacked out. Can you see that? Which is curious, because the original image, the one that we got through Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, has a lot of that information here. I mean, obviously it might change depending on where the UAV that's filming this is positioned, but generally we do have this data, but for some reason they deemed it necessary to redact it in this version. So here it is. I give you the full 4 seconds of the Mosul Orb sphere. Is it the Booga sphere? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And again, credit for this goes to Dustin Slaughter. I'll link this video, his YouTube channel, as well as his tweet down in the description. Let's go. So it has no audio. Okay, I'm not surprised. So there it is. So there it was. If you blinked, you may have missed it. So it is amazing because the footage overall is just 4 seconds long. And you're like, that sucks. 4 seconds, that's nothing for UFO footage. But then you realize that the part where the UFO flies by is basically just 1 second. It's just 1 second. All right, but let's look into this because at least the footage is somewhat sharp, right? And in all honesty, I do respect Dustin Slaughter for going through the effort, filing the lawsuit, jumping through the legal hoops in order to get his hands on this footage. So I respect that hustle, okay? Don't get me wrong. But let's look at this footage in a bit more depth. So we see this sphere, this alleged sphere flying by, and obviously the screenshot that we previously had was this one, right? Where it actually looks a little bit like a puddle or something. And there was some controversy around the puddle, okay? And Mick and all that. We'll get to that in a second. Now, the footage we see here was allegedly recorded at 12:47 p.m., right? So around noon, and the sun was overhead. And you can see that, for example, on this wall here and how it casts the shadow. Do you see the shadow is just on the left of the wall? And it's actually very tight to the wall. The wall doesn't cast a long shadow, meaning the sun is fairly straight overhead above. And that matches, to an extent, the sphere, right? You see the sphere here. This would be the reflection of the sun, sits slightly to the right overhead. So the reflection on the sphere and the position of the sun, based on what we see here at least, seems to match. Also noteworthy that the sphere we see here is out of focus. I mean, all of it seems to be a little bit out of focus, but this might be heavily zoomed in. I have to assume that this UAV is like way high up and they're zooming into these buildings and backyards here for some reason. But what we can see is that the sphere is way more out of focus than the background here, these buildings. If you look at the crispness, if that's a word, of this wall, and then the blurriness of the edge of the sphere, you can clearly see that the sphere is out of focus. And the reason why that occurs is obvious, right? Because the UAV flies presumably rather high, and then it films something with a very zoomed in lens close to the ground, and then the sphere is in between there somewhere. So the UAV is up here filming really high up, ground is down here, and the sphere we're seeing somewhere in the middle. Right, so that means it's out of focus because it's focused on the ground level and it's probably a few hundred meters. I'm guessing, I can't estimate depth here with the sphere, obviously, but it might be a few hundred meters or more above the ground. Of course, there's also the aspect of motion blur going on, and I'm not saying that doesn't play into the blurriness of the sphere at all. It definitely does, but I feel looking at this, even like the little edges up here on the top and bottom of the sphere, because those should much less be affected by motion blur, and they are to an extent, but they're still out of focus. So I think it's a mixture between motion blur and the sphere just being out of focus because it is not close to the ground. Now, I read reports about this video, and people were claiming or theorizing that the sphere itself is actually stationary. It doesn't move at all. The only thing that moves is the UAV, but obviously because it's so far and the camera is so zoomed in, it is fixed on these backyards and it keeps the cameras fixed on that, but the sphere comes into shot just for this 1 second because it's much higher. So it gives the illusion of the sphere actually moving when it's just stationary. The only thing that is moving, presumably, is the UAV. Again, this is a theory. I can't confirm that. But judging from reports of people who did the math and who've done the research, it does seem like the sphere barely moves or doesn't move at all. Now, then there is some debate going on around these black frames, shadows, whatever you want to call them, right? That somehow sit around the sphere. And obviously, if you go to the UFO subreddits, you get comments where people are like, yeah, I've seen this before, bro. I've seen a UFO in 1994. Had the same thing in Florida. It's a force field. It's a force field. I literally saw comments like that. Other people were claiming that it's like some kind of directional energy device, right? And that's why, like, it's a directional energy thing. That's why sometimes you see black here, and then you see black on the other side here, right? And it's like they're using their force field directional energy weapons. That's obvious. Everyone knows that. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's us. Well, it could also just be an artifact, because you kind of can see that the blackness on the edge of the sphere here seems to... First of all, the sphere moves very quickly, okay? So the camera does not have a lot of time to adjust to the sphere. I'm going here in very slow motion, frame by frame. But if you look at it in motion, right, it goes past really, really quickly. Like, there is no time to waste. So a lot of the information about the sphere and its edges gets lost in that motion, in that movement, and the camera struggling to film it. So I think these black shadows, all that really is kind of a visual struggle of the camera to adjust to the background with the sphere. Because you see here, it goes over this white roof part, and then suddenly it becomes very dark. So I think the camera is trying to quickly create like contrast, right, on the fly, trying to understand and visualize what this object is, but it doesn't have time because it moves so quickly. And then again here, as it goes over that bright background, the dark shadow there is visible again. So I think it's really just an artifact. It's the camera trying to adjust to the darkness of the sphere for that brief second, can't manage in those 6-7 frames or whatever it is that we have. And that's how you get like this black shadowy glitch. But feel free to correct me, that's my theory. Maybe there are photography experts out there watching this. I'm happy to stand corrected on this, but that's my theory. Now let's talk about this frame, which obviously mirrors the original frame that we got already in 2023 through Jeremy Corbell. And there's a little bit of controversy going on here that I want to address that is actually just quite cute in my opinion. So if you look at this picture, you could think or theorize, it's something you can mention, and I think it's been mentioned on Metabank and other platforms as well, that this might be a puddle, okay? There are some aspects that kind of speak against it. The blurry edges, it doesn't line up. If, you know, I mean, look at the sharp edges of these puddles here. Doesn't really line up. But at the time in 2023, when we got this photo and this photo only, some people were putting this forward. Some people were saying this could be a puddle. And to be honest, that's a legitimate suggestion. Why not? Put it forward. You can analyze it, stress test the theory almost, then you realize it's probably not a puddle, but it's something you can put forward. But then the video released, and we saw that it's obviously not a puddle. And based on that, Garry Nolan came forward and tweeted the following in reply to another tweet about this incident, saying, "But I thought some game designer said it was a puddle of water." Guys, debunkers dump, huh? Can we all agree? Debunkers dump, huh? Game designers. So this is not true. This is just plain wrong. If you go to the Metabank forum, which is obviously Mick West's forum, and he's referring to Mick West here, in case you don't know this, Mick West used to work for Neversoft, and he was one of the lead developers, as far as I'm aware, for the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater. So that's why he's kind of calling him, in a seemingly degrading way, the game designer here, right? Like he's trying to downplay Mick West's achievements. But if you go to the Metabank forum and look it up, it's actually not true. At no point, as far as I'm aware, has Mick West himself suggested that this is a puddle. It has been discussed on Metabank, his forum, by other people. They put it forward and said, could be a puddle, could not be. But Mick West never said that it's probably a puddle, and that's also why he replied to this Garry Nolan tweet, saying, "A low effort comment from Garry," referring to me, "disappointing. I never said the Mosul Orb was a puddle because the lighting did not work. I've always had balloon as the #1 hypothesis. Also #1 for the Middle East UAP orb, which displayed no enigmatic tech capabilities. And down here, he actually addresses the game designer thing. He says, I didn't even see this. And regarding being some video game designer, while I did help design Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I was more of an engineer and a technical director, which gives a set of skills that's actually more useful in analyzing UFO videos. So see, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know on what part of that game he worked. And in this message, he's obviously reiterating on what he believes this is. And I am aligned with him on this. I think it's a Mylar balloon. Now, this could be a surveillance balloon that maybe the military uses, you know, like a form of blimp. You mount a bunch of cameras underneath. You have it hover, I don't know, 500 meters above your military base. Gives you nice camera sight up above. Cheap way to get cameras high up in the sky permanently. But it could also be a simple silver birthday balloon. Something like that. It's not unthinkable. You guys probably remember this kind of spy balloon story at the time with the Chinese balloon with this kind of almost satellite structure mounted underneath, some kind of surveillance structure. So, you know, it could be something like that as well. It all depends on how high the UAV was flying, whether it was able to be that high above the balloon to get this kind of effect above like a spy balloon. I doubt it, because those often go really high up, almost to the edge of the stratosphere. So to be even way above that, not unthinkable. You know, I'm not an expert in UAV tech, so hopefully we find out more about this in the future. But I think conclusively we can say, yes, we finally have proof that balloons exist. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's a positive. We got that going for us. But in the light of this, I stumbled across this tweet by a man called Grant Lavec. I saw this on my timeline, and he says, if footage of prosaic objects such as Mylar balloons, illumination flares, decorative AID balloons, which was the famous jellyfish UFO, right, Jeremy Corbell presented as well, that turned out to be decorative EID balloons, has now been confirmed by official sources, but we had that suspicion all along. You can go back when that video released. I covered it in a video and showed very similar EID balloons that just looked exactly like that. Jellyfish UFO. So that's what he's referencing here. And then he continues to say, and lens flares are being classified as UAP and then leaked to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp for public dissemination. It raises a few questions, right? So I'm with him here. Number one, why are they being classified as UAP in the first place? If you see an EID balloon, and actually I spoke myself on a previous live stream to someone who was stationed on that base at the time as the alleged jellyfish UAP was flying over that base. They were filming it, they looked at the footage and pretty much classified it on the spot as balloons. So why would footage like that get classified in the first place? Well, my theory on that is, I don't know, again, I never worked in the military or anything, but I would imagine that if there's anything that's not immediately 100% identified, where we're like, that's one of our craft, no problem. Mylar balloons, you have the theory it's balloons, but let's classify it preemptively anyway. All this footage that just shows like balloons and spherical objects and could be satellites, whatever we're filming, if we don't know exactly what it is in that moment, just preemptively classify it and we just put it in that archive. So I'd imagine they're almost classifying these kind of documents in bulk. It's not that they investigate or look very closely at this one piece of film and then decide individually that that piece of film is actually worth being classified. It's like, no. Everything that shows anything we can't identify, archive, classified, done. But that kind of seemingly leads into the second question that Grant is asking here, which is, why are the folks responsible for the unauthorized disclosures not able to identify them as prosaic objects? Can they? I mean, if we can trust the man that I previously spoke to in my live stream, who saw it, he claimed that they were able to identify it on the spot as, you know, Mylar balloons in this particular case. So what is going on here? Why do they get classified? Can they not identify them? And then as a third question, why are they then being leaked to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp? What is going on here, right? I mean, these are legit questions. Very often this footage comes out, like the other example, I guess, is Louis Elizondo holding up his little irrigation circles picture, which clearly he didn't vet properly before he presented it. These films, these pictures often get debunked more or less immediately after they get released by the wider public, by people on forums like Metabunk. Like, they're doing a much better job at debunking these seemingly than the military itself, who somehow classify these films and then leak them to George Knapp. What's going on here? And to be honest, I want to forward this question to you. What do you think is going on here? Why do they classify films that are easily identifiable? Are they able to identify them? And how do they then get leaked to Jeremy Corbell, if even amateurs like myself can identify them, more often than not at least? So I'll forward the question to you. Please leave that down in the comment section below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe we can have a productive and fruitful debate. I would appreciate that. Guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed this little update on the Mosul Orb. Oh my god. Orbs everywhere, okay? I can't stop seeing orbs. There will be more, I'm sure, so I'll be covering it on this channel. Subscribe for more. Smash the like button on your way out. Join our Discord. The link to that is in the description. I appreciate your time. Take care of yourselves, and I'm out. Bye.